Okay, shalom to everyone. Great to see the loyalists appearing. I think maybe some more people will be popping in as soon as we start rolling. I see Angela from the island of Jersey. I didn't. It's not New Jersey. It's okay. I better stop fooling around now. I'm in a very happy mood. I had some sweets, which I shouldn't do, and I see your mom. Susan Pellegrini. Okay. The important people are here. Maybe some more important people will pop up pretty soon. Okay. Things are, of course, very interesting in the sense that in the Middle East, you have to learn to expect the unexpected. Here in Kedar, we can hear the rumble of aircraft over our heads all the time and increasingly. And before Israel does anything, they do a lot of training flights. So we are watching and listening and being ready for whatever happens. I don't want to. I have no idea when Iran will take place, and I have no idea when Gaza will take place, or Lebanon, or Syria. It's kind of like we're at the circus. And Netanyahu is the juggler, and he's juggling all these balls in the air at the same time. I don't know where to start from. Gaza, as you all know, is in a mode of ceasefire, and we are all waiting to see if Witkoff, the representative of President Trump, can get the negotiations moving again. Prime Minister Netanyahu has agreed to continue the ceasefire a few more days. I don't think Gaza is interested in a war again, but on the other hand, Gaza is playing hard to get. So we will see where this goes with Gaza. The protests in Israel are heating up again against Netanyahu because these left-wing socialist one world government people in Israel are blaming everything on Netanyahu. But an interesting point is that a fourth high-ranking officer in the Israeli army has quit. He's decided to resign. He was involved in the failures of October the 7th, a year ago. We're expecting more people to resign. Most importantly, the head of the Secret Service here in Israel, Ronen Bar, he is holding on to the altars, the corners of the altar, does not want to resign. I have a feeling in the end Netanyahu is going to simply have to fire him. We have the same situation with our state attorney general. We have the same problem with the Supreme Court justices. We have the same problem with the attorney general of the army. All left-wing appointees who are working in tandem to overthrow Netanyahu. So what I will say is that I think that the key to success is patience. And Netanyahu has been doing a very, very good job with patience. And what we're doing now is little by little, we are getting rid of the old crust of officers and top people who have been in power in Israel for decades. And the time has come to replace them with younger officers and younger judges who are not part of the old boys club, where friends appoint friends, and the top people get weeded out and thrown out of the military and of the Supreme Court. So I think Netanyahu, it's a chess game, and Netanyahu, I think, is doing an excellent job. He's the right man in the right place at the right time. I have been saying this for 2 years now, the time of these Zooms we've been doing. And again, I wanted to thank Lori Bond and her family for standing with Israel by doing these Zooms. Well, that's regarding Gaza. We still have 59 people hostage, of which 35 are dead, and the others we think are alive. We don't know. But the hollering going on in the streets against Netanyahu is that it's as if it's Netanyahu's fault. And I don't know how much you guys know in the States, but very simply, the top echelons in the army refused to keep Netanyahu in the loop. And he's only the prime minister, after all. Things were kept secret. Things happened, and then Netanyahu gets blamed. The idea was to overthrow Netanyahu, to blame him for everything. But I think that the 70%, maybe 80% of the Jewish people in Israel understand that none of this is Netanyahu's fault. He was working according to the instructions he was getting from the generals. So we're waiting to see where all of this will be leading very soon. About Lebanon, we have, of course, Hezbollah trying to reorganize and regroup for the next stage of the war. The Israeli Air Force is in action when we find terrorists on the ground getting ready to bring in weaponry or to launch attacks. We have excellent intelligence in Lebanon, and our Air Force does what it has to do. And all of this is in the presence of the U.S. Military, French military, and the Lebanese military, who understand that Israel is in a very difficult situation, and that we have to defend ourselves, but we do everything in coordination with our chief allies, which is the United States. I don't want to call France an ally. It's not an ally, but it's one of the peacekeeping witnesses. And of course, we can see a change taking place in Lebanon, where Hezbollah is getting weaker and weaker. They're trying to reverse that trend, but the Druze, and we're going to get back to the Druze in a few minutes, the Druze in Lebanon are definitely not with the Shiites anymore, at least until they change their leadership. And I think I'm going to say something kind of radical, because you know me, I never say anything radical. But I think there's going to come a day of reckoning in which the Shiites throughout the Middle East are going to have to completely change their diskette and realize that Israel is not the enemy. The enemy of the Shiites is the Sunnis. And the Sunnis are 85%, and they're backed primarily by Turkey. Turkey hates the Shiites. And so the Shiites of Lebanon, I think eventually they're going to realize that Israel is by force, is their ally. Today it was in the news, very interesting. A Druze leader was saying that Israel has to always be there to protect the Druze, to protect the Kurds, and to protect the Shiites, who until now are still the enemy. But we will see where that goes. The Druze in Lebanon have still not jumped on the wagon like the Druze of Israel, the Druze of the Golan Heights, the Druze in Suwaida, in the southeastern Syria. But the Druze know that their only friend is Israel, and they are not with the Shiites and they are not with the Sunnis. There was an interesting, very short battle in the outskirts of Damascus. And I know Christians are always asking about Damascus. I think it's Isaiah 17, verse 1. There is a Druze neighborhood. Actually, I have to correct myself. It's a mixed Druze and Christian neighborhood. Outside of Damascus, it's called Jermana. And the fanatic Muslims of the Turkish-backed Julani group started to attack. And we really don't know. There's a lot of battle fog there. I don't know if Israel actually got involved, but Israel made it very clear that Israel was not going to allow the Sunnis, backed by Turkey, to touch the Druze, and we would be always defending the Druze. But the funny thing is that the Druze and the Christians are allies in Germana. So I was thinking for myself, doesn't that mean that the Israeli military is going to protect the Christians also in Syria? So this Druze commander came out and said Israel has to protect the Christians, the Jews, the Kurds, and of course the Shiites. So that'll be very interesting to see how this all develops. But it is going to develop. The Turks are working methodically to underscore their fanatic Sunni Muslim terrorist allies, led by Gilani in Turkey. No, in Syria, excuse me. Israel has notified them that their presence will not be tolerated south of Damascus. In other words, from Damascus south to the border of Israel is about 20 miles. That area is going to be a cordon sanitaire in French. They say cordon sanitaire means a sanitary corridor in which the fanatic Sunnis will not be tolerated. And Israel is strengthening its battle positions in the south of Syria. We're not talking about Golan Heights anymore. Golan Heights, of course, is for sure. But there are 6 Druze villages on the other side of the border at the Golan Heights. Then you have the big area of Suwaida, where you have the Druze. And now you have the Druze neighborhood 5 kilometers, 3 miles, just to the east of Damascus, Jeramana. And Israel is ready to move in at any moment that the Druze tell us that they need us. Also, Israel is going to pay the salaries of the Druze soldiers and officers in their defense force in Syria. And what may be considered a very low salary here in Israel is considered priceless in Syria. So we are protecting the Jews like our own. And I don't know, I'm very happy about it. I love the Jews. I love the Bible. And Jethro, everybody jokes about the father-in-law, or the mother-in-law, but Jethro is the father-in-law of Moses, and the Jews are descended from all the children of Jethro. So we're watching everything very clearly. I think overall the situation in Syria is getting better and better every day for Israel. We didn't hear really anything. Everything is in snippets in the Israeli news. But they were saying in the Israeli news that Israel is meeting with Kurdish leadership. Now, you've heard me. You've heard me speak about Kurdistan, about the need for a Kurdish state. And like I said before, the Kurds are not only in Syria, they are also in Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. So this is very, very important for the future. We have to really, really pay close attention. The Kurds are definitely our allies. The Druze are not only allies, but they're also our brethren. The Christians, of course, believe in the same Bible as we do. And we're going to have to see if the Shiites can change their tune regarding Iran. And I think President Trump is working to break down the opposition against Israel in Iran and bring about a democratic government. So that'll be very interesting to see also. Will we actually end up attacking Iran? Very good question. I suppose as long as we keep them guessing, that's good. But it could be that anything could happen with Iran at any time. Don't forget the Houthis in Yemen will immediately start lobbing missiles at us if something breaks out, if or when something breaks out with Gaza. So the war here definitely is not over, but I think it's fair to say that we are getting stronger day by day. They were talking about mobilizing 400,000 Israeli militia, 400,000 people in the reserve. But what that means is that basically 400,000 of our reservists have been left to go home for a few weeks or a few months because our total amount of reservists is 300,000. So when they said 400,000, I jumped because I don't know where we have another 400,000 from. So basically they will be recalling the reservists if necessary. I will say one negative thing, however, and I, as a person who lost my business and lost my home in 1982, 83, 84, when we first went into the Lebanese operation there, first Lebanon war. And I lost everything because of my service in the artillery. And I mean, God replaced everything, but it's not cool to lose your home, lose your car, lose everything you have. My wife should have divorced me. A lot of people are getting divorced now. People are going through tremendous strain because of this war. And I think Netanyahu basically had to release many hundreds of thousands of Israeli reservists. Now he's going to have to call them back if the war breaks out. So I think it's one of the reasons we have to understand why the war in Lebanon and Syria and Gaza, all these conflagrations have kind of had dampers put on them to give Israel a breather as to what's going on in all those countries. You know, as a thought in the back of my mind, I would say, you know, I prefer every day that we don't have fighting going on, because in addition to losing soldiers during the fighting, it's a tremendous strain on the reservists. It's a tremendous strain on the Israeli economy. And I mean, I'm not suffering now because God has replaced everything I lost in 1982, 83. And I'm living off of Social Security and the Israeli Bituach Leumi. So, you know, we have our house. We are without debt, praise God. And we live on a basic salary, which allows me to continue functioning. We're not making money, but, you know, like when you get to 76, you really start losing your appetite for avaricious economic planning and ambition. So, you know, we're fine. Rachel and I went last night down to Tel Aviv to enjoy a party with our Egyptian colleagues of Rachel and her family, all the people who were in jail in Egypt. And let me tell you, these ladies, the husbands maybe help, but these ladies are mean cooks. And so it was very nice. Yesterday we went down to Tel Aviv. And today is kind of like relaxed day, except for the Zooms. And good to be home. And that's regarding our situation. And again, we have to put all our emphasis on rebuilding the north of Israel, getting our houses rebuilt, getting our Israeli civilian population back into their homes, getting the schools set up. Everything is happening now. Also, the settlements around the kibbutzim around Gaza, a lot of, I think 85% of the school children are back in school. But everything is iffy. I mean, I don't think that Gaza can do anything against us now. They're not a threat anymore, though they are trying to rebuild their army units. If a war does break out, we will now be fighting 16-year-olds because, like in Nazi Germany at the end of the war, 16-year-olds were sent to fight the Russians and the Americans and the British and the French. Gaza lost tens of thousands of its seasoned warriors, terrorists, and so now they're training 16-year-olds, giving them a gun and sending them to the front if a war breaks out. The estimate of the Israeli military is that that Hamas will be terminated within 4 weeks of intense fighting. And I mean, that's when Houthis start launching ballistic missiles again at us. But I think it's fair to say, and I'm happy to say, that Gaza has been ground down to dust. They have some troops, a few thousand young kids. It will not be easy for them to reconstitute their military capabilities to fight Israel. So we are watching that very carefully. We have ground down Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Lebanese, I think, are very relieved. I'm thinking to myself, President Trump probably has a card up his sleeve to provide an Abraham Accord agreement with Lebanon. Now that Hezbollah has been suppressed, I think Lebanon would be a candidate, especially with tremendous input by the U.S., to become an ally of Israel with help from the U.S. government, U.S. military. So we're watching Lebanon clearly. They're even saying perhaps that Syria, and again, tremendous pressure would have to be brought to bear on Turkey. But it might be that the Turks will actually support American intervention in Syria and some kind of an Abraham Accord agreement with Syria as well. And I'm not venturing any support or lack of support for all these things. Netanyahu is the man. He knows what's going on. And as President Trump said, we're working for peace. We don't want wars. And I'm not saying here in any way, yes, let's go to the gung-ho and get all this done with fighting. It could happen, but it may very well be that we may have some kind of a peace agreement with Lebanon, a peace agreement with Syria. My dream personally would be if we could have a peace agreement with Iran. It would all depend on the reaction of the Iranian people to whatever sanctions the U.S. will impose on Iran. Or will Israel have to still attack the nuclear project of Iran? Iran is very close now to having one or more nuclear bombs. They have the uranium. Now they're working on the missile. So we're watching that very carefully. Don't forget, once Iran is neutralized, all the proxies are neutralized. So I think more important for President Trump than the Nobel Peace Prize would be to have his bust on Mount Rushmore. I would like to see that personally. And I think President Trump is playing for very high stakes. I think President Trump can pull many things off which will overpower the haters and the warmongers. So we are here, licking our wounds, catching our breath, and we are coordinating everything with President Trump. So I'm very excited to see what happens there. Question?
Avi, those groups of protesters, excuse me, are any of them still talking about a two-state solution, or is that finally just everybody knows there can be no two-state solution?
I think everybody understands it, but I think the important thing for these protesters is just to overthrow Netanyahu. And they would probably want to have the ex-generals and all the people who are on the payroll of the deep state in Washington, D.C., to try to get a completely new narrative going. In my opinion, we still have solid 70% support for Netanyahu and the right wing, but we still have work to do. Don't forget, we are now in March of 2025. The next elections officially are 2026 in October. In other words, a year and a half from now. Yesterday, there was a decision among the opposition people that Naftali Bennett, who was the prime minister for a few months before Netanyahu came back, these protesters are itching already for elections. I think they will lose by a landslide. What I think Netanyahu is doing is biding his time so that we can get as many of these deep state ex-generals out of whatever positions they are. We want to see new people, younger people. We want to see the Supreme Court purged of these Bolsheviks. The Attorney General, State Attorney General, has to be purged. The Israeli Army Attorney General has to be purged. There are a lot of people that have to be purged. And so I think that Netanyahu is showing great wisdom in postponing elections until the scheduled October 2026. And of course, my party will be running. The only thing is, I don't have the funds to do campaigning right now. But if and when elections are called, I will be running. My people will be running. My people are still there, except for my dear number two, David Friedman, who passed away. By the way, I wanted to acknowledge the death of Dory Gold, a great, I don't want to say politician, he wasn't a politician, he was a great diplomat who served Israel very faithfully, and he just passed away at age 71. I'm 76, so I feel, bad when people younger than myself pass away. But I translated Dory Gold when I was in the Prime Minister's office in 1989, 1990. Listen, years go by, and I have to thank God that I'm still there. Okay, Lori wrote me a question. Does Netanyahu appoint replacements for the people who are being purged? And the answer is definitely yes. I'll say something else also. One of the reasons for the war with Gaza was because Gaza was watching the Israeli TV, and the Israeli TV was constantly highlighting a letter that was signed by 300 Air Force officers that they were going to refuse to serve in the Israeli Air Force. And so the Gaza terrorists said, this is our opportunity. There's division in Israel. And I do know, they're not talking about it, but a lot of these 300 Air Force people are in their 80s. And so, it's like the joke. It's not a funny joke. It's a horrible joke. But, the Polish mother's favorite hobby is reading the obituaries every morning to see who died. It's a very sick Polish joke, but it's very true. And so we are watching who of the 300 people who signed that letter to refuse to serve in the military, who of these people are still alive? And I'm sure that Netanyahu, our former chief of staff is leaving his position tomorrow, being replaced by our new chief of staff, who was handpicked by Netanyahu and by Secretary of Defense Israel Katz. So we have a new chief of staff. One of our problems in the last 2 years was that the chief of staff, who was totally disgraced in this war for the great failures he's guilty of, was appointing new commanders who were, part of the deep state. And so Netanyahu blocked it. And so now we have a new chief of staff who's working hand in hand with Netanyahu and with Israel Katz. I think by extension with President Trump also. And we are putting in people, the right people this time. 1 second, Bill Clinton made it with pride that he left. The left-wing Dems interfered in Israeli politics. Neil, very good point. You all heard of the not Carlisle. I think maybe the Carlisle. The Democrats under Clinton sent a top American Democrat official in 1999 for the elections to overthrow Netanyahu and to help former defense minister, who eventually did become prime minister, to overthrow Netanyahu. So the left-wing Democrats in 1999 sent, I think it was Carlisle, and overthrew Netanyahu. So yes, the Democrats have always been very, very much involved in subverting the Israeli government. I would say I don't have a great appreciation for Bush Jr. or Bush Sr. either, even though they were Republicans. But I will say that President Trump is a gift from God. There's no other way to describe President Trump from a Jewish perspective. He's a gift from God. And I think our best bet with President Trump is just to play ball and not to do stupid things like the Ukrainian president. which is just stupid what he did. I'll say something. Some of you may be angry with me. I support Ukraine in this war with Russia. Russia was the aggressor. But you don't achieve anything from the United States by offending the United States in the Oval Office of the White House. So we must watch that. So I think Netanyahu understands President Trump. They are like a hand and a glove, and they are working very closely together. I want you to know, every morning I wake up very happy. I'm very, very optimistic with President Trump being with us. And we don't need American boots on the ground. We can do this by ourselves. We just have to make sure we have the weapons and the political backing of the United States. And President Trump scares the heck out of everybody. So, you know, if we are on his good side, I think that's 90% of the war. Was there anything in in your question, Lori, that I didn't answer? I think his name was Carlisle. Anyway, Biden hated him, and Kamala Harris hated him, and I think he was very disgraced by the Democrat Party, finally. But the U.S. did play a very major role in overthrowing Netanyahu in 1999.
Hi, Avi.
Yeah.
Avi, today is the Arab Summit to focus on Egypt's alternative to Trump's Gaza plan. I've just been reading through a little bit, and it's saying that one in the plan is they want to build an airport in Gaza. Is that something that Israel will allow?
Well, we had a plan all along to give Gaza an airport. We had a plan all along to give them a seaport. There were a lot of things we could have done, but it was all going to be aimed at destroying Israel. So in the end, we didn't do it. So if the Arab plan is airport and the seaport, I mean, all these things we agreed to, but on the condition they should just stop hating us. James Carville, yes, thank you, Neil. I don't know why I said Carlisle. I'm getting old. James Carville, this was the one who overthrew Netanyahu in 1999. Thank you, Neil. So I don't think there will be any kind of an airport or seaport or anything until Hamas is out. I'm not saying that until all of the Gaza Arabs are out. I will say that Gaza Arabs who wish to emigrate should not be hindered. If they want to leave, let them leave. But I'm not saying kick everyone out of Gaza. But those who remain have to make sure that they stop killing us. They have to basically renounce Islamic insanity and become friends. If they don't want to live in peace with us, they have to go live in peace somewhere else.
Yeah. And I've just seen Amir has posted that there's a B-52 nuclear capability US aircraft flying over Gaza, close to Israel right now. Do you know why that would be? Any ideas?
You are a very, very interesting young lady. I didn't hear anything about B-52s, but I will say I was thinking about B-52s for which scenario? Not for Gaza. The Egyptians have thousands of tanks massed on the border with Israel.
Yeah.
And I think B-52s, they don't have to be nuclear, but the bombs coming down would completely eradicate the Egyptian military capabilities. It would be really stupid of the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Don't forget, we were forced after Egyptian invasions in 48, 49, after the War of 1956, after 67, after the War of Attrition, 68 to 70, the Yom Kippur War, 1973. You know how many times it took Sinai? And each time, American presidents made us give it back.
Yeah.
And as I said before, we cannot say no to the American president. But if President Trump is with us and the Egyptians are crazy enough to try to attack us again, I mean, you know, if we get attacked once, shame on them. But if we get attacked over and over again, shame on us.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And I understand from Bloomberg, don't know if it's true, but Trump has asked Putin to uh, negotiate with Iran regarding dismantling its nuclear power stations. Um, I don't really know what to think about that, because obviously Putin and Iran are good friends. Um, I'm just a bit taken aback by that. What do you
Well,
think?
I don't know if you remember, you're too young, but President John F. Kennedy used to say, I have this to say about that. I don't know if you remember. He was famous with his Boston accent. Boston. They said, well, I have this to say about that. From what I understand of Russia, it's like Iran is an ally of Russia, and it's like Russia has crutches, thanks to Iran. Iran has provided Russia with crutches. If President Trump makes a deal with Putin, we're not giving Russia, America is not giving Russia crutches. America is giving Russia a Rolls Royce. I mean, Russia is one of the richest countries in the world with all its raw materials. And, President Trump offered Zelensky a deal for the the earth
Yeah,
material,
Earth, yeah.
the rare
Hmm.
earth material. And Zelensky, some people say, was guided by the Democrats to make a fuss and condemn Trump, which is really stupid. So
Yeah,
maybe Trump will say, okay, we'll take our business elsewhere. We'll go to Putin. And let me just say one thing. Russia has suffered so much from this war in the Ukraine. It was a stupid war, should never happen. But it could be that if America makes a deal with Putin, this will redeem Putin and keep him in power. When all of a
yeah.
sudden, when all of a sudden the prosperity comes back to Russia, maybe there will be strings attached. Maybe
Mm.
President Trump will say to Putin, "Listen, this thing with Iran, with Ukraine, you really don't need this war. You have so much more to gain by working with us and developing the oil and the rare earth minerals under the ground in Russia. Russia really, if they weren't so stupid, they'd be the richest country in the world."
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say I'm positive that President Trump has advisors who teach him about rare earth minerals,
Mm.
what Russia has available, what Ukraine has available. And don't forget, Ukraine used to be part of Russia, so it's the same ground, it's the same rich earth.
Mm.
Um, but I appreciate all your comments, Angela. You say things which challenge me, but they make sense.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely sending a message to Zelensky if that's what what
Well,
he's up to.
you know what? President Trump is a comedian, and he said, I was in what was the show? You're fired, you know,
Oh yeah.
and Zelensky was a stand-up comedian. So they're show business people. Show
Mm.
business people have a way of exaggerating different things in different ways. Um, I'm just sad for the Ukrainian people that the Democrat Party wrecked the efforts of President Trump with Zelensky.
Yeah, there's clearly they don't want that war to stop. There's
Yeah.
no interest in stopping that war. There's more to it than meets the eye, I believe.
I'll say
Anyway,
something else also, and everybody who's on this Zoom might want to hold on to their seats very, very tightly. Um, I was on Radio Moscow in 1994 when I was in Moscow, and I was saying that the enemy of Russia is not the United States. This is already after the collapse of the Soviet Union and Soviet communism. And America's not your enemy anymore. Europe is not your enemy anymore. Israel is not your enemy anymore. And And my interviewer, Oleg Gripkov, said to me, well, we are still communist by ideology, and we believe in the solidarity of all the nations. And I looked at him, I said, that's all nonsense, I said to him. You Russians have been fighting the Turks for 1,000 years, and it's not over. And you are going to still keep fighting the Turks. Don't forget, Constantinople, it was supposed to be Russian. And he looked at me and he said, you're right, he said to me. All Russian school children are taught about the Battle of Stalingrad, that when the time came for the Nazi armies, don't forget, the Nazi armies were not just Germans. They had Hungarians, and they had Austrians, and they had Spanish, and they had Italians, and they also had an SS Gestapo unit of Muslims. And when the time came to surrender to the Red Army, the only group which would not surrender was the Muslims. And they charged running at the Red Army machine gunners with knives clenched in their teeth and their bayonets drawn as they were charging. And the Red Army machine gunners killed all of them, shot all of them. I mean, that's what they were looking for. They weren't going to surrender. What have I been talking about Turkey the last few weeks, the last few months? Turkey is going to be a threat, not only to Israel, but to the entire Judeo-Christian West. The Turks see their borders as going from Morocco on the Atlantic Ocean, which was the maximum extent of the Turkish Empire, Ottoman Empire, from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to China. And they are a threat to the Chinese, they are a threat to the Russians, they are a threat to the Americans, they're a threat to the Israelis, they're a threat to everyone. And I think last week I said that the Turks don't understand the mistake that they're making, because don't forget that 1/4 of the population of Turkey is Kurdish, and 1/4 of the land is Kurdish, and that's on the southeastern part of Turkey. Turks are not going to just go away. You have at least 20 million Kurds there. Then in the southwest of Turkey, you have Shiites who are Alawites, which is the same group that has lost the war under Bashar al-Assad. They lost against the Turks. 1/4 of Turkey is Alawite, the southwestern part of Turkey, and the Alawite Shiites are treated like I don't want to say horrible conditions, but the Kurds and the Shiites in Turkey are half the population. And don't forget, the Russians are just to the north. I don't think Russia will want to go to war with Turkey, but this might be the end of Turkey. If they go to war against everybody, in world history, look, every time Germany started a war against the world, Germany lost. We're not talking now about right. We're talking about might. We're talking about the industrial capacity, for example, of the United States against the Japanese. We outproduced them. We outproduced the Japanese. We outproduced the Germans. When the German soldiers were looking at the American soldiers who invaded Normandy, and when they noticed in areas that were abandoned by the American troops, they found chocolate cake, which had been baked the day before in New Jersey. And the Germans, when they saw that, they said, we lost the war. If the Americans can provide chocolate cake to their troops fighting the Germans in France, the Germans lost. So this was, I think if you saw the movie Patton, General Patton, there was a part there where the Germans were using horses to take wagons and supplies. And the Americans and the Brits were, we had gasoline motor vehicles. Germans knew they were finished. It's just Hitler was so crazy, he kept fighting. Erdogan is crazy. He's going to keep fighting, and he's going to fight Israel also.
Yeah, he is crazy. I've seen some footage of him in Turkey with masses screaming from the stage about Israel, Netanyahu being a Nazi and they have to be eradicated, etc., etc.
Were you in Turkey or you saw it
No,
on
I
TV?
saw it on a newsreel thing.
No, the reason I'm saying is if there's anyone here on the Zoom who has any fantasies about going to Turkey, what you need to do is go into Turkish government offices or schools and look at the maps. The maps are red, showing all the extent of Turkish conquest from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Atlantic to China. And don't think
Yeah.
the Chinese don't know all of that. Why do you think the Chinese are so ruthless with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province? So, I was supposed to go to China to speak about the Islamic threat to China. And I had an American pastor who does business in China. He was going to take me. I was supposed to speak in 41 churches in China. And then maybe fortunately for me, the COVID virus broke out, everything stopped. So I have not gone. I would love to go to China, but I don't know if it'll ever happen now. Anyway, it's good to have a chat with you, Angela.
Yes, you too. Thank you,
Thank
Avi.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments?
I'll comment, Avi. Here in the U.S., at least, I don't know about the rest of the world, but the animated version of the beheading of the 21 Egyptians, I don't know if that strikes home with you and Rachel or not, but it's getting a lot of publicity and press here, at least. Do you want to comment about that? Is that something that you're aware of? Is that getting any publicity in Israel?
Who got beheaded?
They were Coptic Christians, and it's getting a lot of publicity. It's called the 21. They did it in animated in Egyptian iconography, whatever, pictures or something. I just thought maybe Rachel was interested in that or something, but they were beheaded by ISIS.
Not the Egyptian government.
No, not the government, not at all. It was they were captured evidently by ISIS, and it's getting a lot of publicity here in the U.S. at least. It's an animated version of what happened.
Remember, Avi, it was several years ago on the beach. They lined them up in orange jumpsuits.
I think that was perhaps not in Egypt. I think it was in Libya. But it could have been in Egypt because ISIS is everywhere.
They were Egyptian Coptic Christians, but they lined them up on the beach in orange
Yeah,
jumpsuits.
but I think they were Egyptian Coptic Christians who were in Libya working, if I remember correctly. Listen, the Israeli Air Force, the Israeli military, invited the Egyptian military into Sinai and to fight the ISIS people, and the Egyptians succeeded in defeating ISIS. Then they didn't want to pull out. The Egyptian military does not want to pull out. They are in contravention of the peace agreements with Israel. But there was a very strong ISIS presence in northern Sinai. And there were travel warnings to Israelis not to go to Egyptian Sinai out of fear of what the ISIS people could do to them. But still, Israelis are not afraid of anything, which is, I don't say that in respect of their behavior. When they go across the border on the Sinai coast just to get away from everything, but the everything catches up with them. I remember it. Now I remember. It was Egyptian Coptic Christians who were in Libya working to make money to send home, and they were just kidnapped and beheaded. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me about that.
But there's just sort of a resurgence of that and kind of a glorification of it, I think is what Neil's talking about that's happening right
Yeah.
now.
You know, I have to tell you something. I have so many emails every day talking about what ISIS is doing, the Boko Haram, what they're doing to the Christians in Nigeria and in other parts of sub-Saharan desert. It's completely crazy. They're just killing Christians throughout Africa. Nobody says anything.
Well, they had an incident in Africa. I don't know if everybody heard about the Christians in a church that they went in and decapitated 70.
Yes, I'm talking about that.
Yeah.
Every day I'm getting emails.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the Congo,
Mm-hmm.
but it's happening all over.
Yeah, the ones you were talking about in the jumpsuits, they made a movie of it, but the movie is only like 15 minutes.
Yes, this is what Lori was talking about.
Yeah.
Lori
Yeah, it's a movie, but it's only 15 minutes, the movie.
listen, what the terrorists did to us on October 7th in the Gaza area, Gaza envelope. I mean, they took babies and put them in microwaves and cooked them.
Yes. I can't forget that.
Completely crazy. You know, I have to tell you a story. I don't remember where I heard it from, and it sounds so outrageous that you don't want to believe it. But in Iraq, there was a Christian family. Their son got kidnapped, and then the leader of the Muslim group says, "Come and get your son." And so the father, you know, went running to the house of the Muslim and said, "Where's my son?" He said, No, sit down. Let's be friends. We're going to eat first." And then the father finally was saying, they were eating. The father was saying, "Where's my son? Where's my son?" So they said, "You're eating him right now." Because these ISIS people, they're cannibals.
Yeah.
That happened in Russia also.
I'm sorry that I have to disgust some of you. I mean, we got disgusted hearing these things.
Well, we need to know the level of their sickness and evilness to understand, but I sometimes don't feel like it really makes any difference to people. They just don't. I don't know what it is. They can't.
Well, listen, I will say one thing. These ISIS people were also doing horrible things to the Kurds and also Yazidis. I don't know if you ever heard of the Yazidis. They are the original indigenous people of Iraq, and they're not Muslim. And I mean, they speak Arabic, but they're not Muslim. And I think that they kidnapped and raped and sold into sexual slavery 10,000 Yazidi women. The men were all killed. This is Islam. This is Islam. And of course, I got to, you know, when I was in Switzerland, I didn't have a chance to talk about all these things. But by the way, I have to tell you, I got some kind of a message from, I don't know, was it YouTube? Somebody said they were going to be, there was a term they used, would be like embargoed, but not embargoed. It was something a little milder than, they said I was very impudent. I was impudent against Islam. So you still have these crazy people in YouTube and Facebook and Skype and Instagram and Telegram. And by the way, I'm being weeded out little by little from all of these organizations because I'm saying the same thing I've been saying for 35 years. So, you know, whatever happens, happens. You know, I'm not going to bend the truth. I'm going to say what has to be said.
Well, it's good that President Trump is really going after the universities that are promoting anti-Semitism, and also the Palestinians' protests on the campuses. He's going after the universities that are promoting this and providing the opportunity for them to cause all of this chaos on the campuses and everything. So that has been really good to see for a change here, that he's trying to stop the universities and colleges' involvement and promoting all of that anti-Semitism.
You know, Elizabeth, I have to mention something. I haven't said this even to my wife yet, but I noticed something on the TV, because I always have to get everything cleared through my own personal censorship here in the house. When Zelensky was debating with Trump, and Zelensky said, listen, we're at war. And in war, you know, people suffer. You remember he said that. And then he said to Trump, and America's going to suffer also.
Yeah.
And Trump shut him down, wouldn't let him talk. But I think Zelensky understands that there's a problem in America, and Americans are simply incapable of understanding the horrors of ISIS. And not only ISIS, America is thoroughly overrun by Chinese government operatives, maybe Russian operatives also, the cartels. You know, the cartels are chopping people's heads off.
Yes.
And where did they get it from? Venezuela is on the verge of invading Guyana, which used to be British Guyana. And because Guyana has an incredible rare earth mineral deposits in Guyana.
That's where my mother was born there.
You see, it's all your fault. So anyway, so the United States may have to go to war with Venezuela because Venezuela is controlled by Iran and all the cartels and the communists, and there's a lot of cleaning up that has to go on. But, you know, I think first, President Trump, his primary consideration is straightening out the American economy. And once things get straightened out and Americans, you know, a little more relieved from that, Americans can start looking. I spoke about this, about the Monroe Doctrine. America has to be responsible for the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, it says in the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. The same applies to America. Those who bless America will be blessed. Those who curse America will be cursed. Whatever applies to the Jews in Israel applies to the Christians and America. And these colleges are training these terrorists to fight America. The Jews don't count. Jews are nothing. What counts is the American Christians. And so it's very important that the American Christians be aware of all these things that could happen.
And what's so bad is they don't even know what they're fighting. They are so illiterate in these colleges. The education is so poor, and America hasn't been educating them on their country. They should be proud of their country. And our colleges and universities have been overran with these people of that faith, Islam and communism and everything else, but they were never taught it as children in our schools, and now we're having to do a big reversal in our education because these kids have no clue, you know, anything about this country and God, especially God, and how it all is, you know, works together, you know, for instance. But so I'm glad to see that Trump is really pushing back on all of that and addressing all those issues on the campuses and in the schools for parents to take back the education of their children.
I want to add another thing also, if I may. And I think I must have mentioned this at least once or twice over the last 2 years. When I was a young kid growing up in Great Neck, New York, I went every day to public school from 8 in the morning till 3. Then I went to intramurals. Intramurals, you know, sports after school hours. That was from 3 to 5. From 5 to 7, I would go to the synagogue, and I would go to Hebrew school, Hebrew high school. I mean, this is a crazy life I had. I was constantly studying. And I had Israeli teachers. We were taught many things about, of course, about Israel and Judaism, but we learned things about history that were not being taught in the American schools. And I have been recommending in every church that I go to in America that the churches should fill the void. The churches should be having every day from 5 to 7. Kids come home from school, they can go to have sports for an hour and a half. Then they should go to church and relearn Christianity from the beginning. And to relearn Christianity, you have to learn about Israel and about Judaism also. And the problem is ignorance. Indeed, the problem is ignorance. And so I think, and I've recommended this in the past, you know, I have to tell you, I'm going to say something very arrogant. This is very impudent, what I'm going to say now. When I was graduating high school in New York, my average was 86. In America, I don't know if they still have it. There was something called National Honor Society. Did all you ever hear of National Honor Society? And
Yeah.
I got accepted with 86 average, and there were many people with 90s, straight A's, 90s and 90s. They didn't get in, and people were saying, "Why did Avi get in?" And there are a number of reasons, but one of the reasons I gave was that I admire the Soviets because in Russia, the leadership youth would go into something called Komsomol. Komsomol is communist youth. America should have an American-style Komsomol, which would be Christian, and which would train the young people in America for what America needs them to do. And my teachers were very nationalist. They loved me. And they said, you know, your idea is a very good idea. Maybe America, like Young Americans for Freedom, YAF, should adopt some of these things. America is a massive country. It is big. And it has responsibilities in the whole Western Hemisphere, which is bigger. And American youth should be training. American youth should know these places. I do not see any other country in the world that can fill the role of America as being the leader number one in the world. But you've got to train your young people. And so that's what I have to say. That's what I've been saying for the last 75 years.
I totally agree with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yes. And I think that's what's been realized. And that's why we've had, you know, Trump's popularity. They showed a poll last night that his popularity was in the young people's age range from 18, I think, to 39. And it's like the young people are waking up to what is the values of their country. And that's quite an impressive poll for him to have something at 60% like that among that particular age group, because they said that never happens. And so it's been quite an amazing comeback or return, that the kids are realizing that there's more to all of this, and they've seen how their parents maybe have struggled, how they have struggled, and realize that you have to put these kind of things in priority.
See, I would also add that if this is too big for the American government to do, then at least churches, I won't say which ones, any church which has good teachers, people with historical memory, to teach young people in the after hours, after public school. Churches should be responsible for educating the young people about the true American Christian history.
Oh, yes.
And the churches are you know, I know churches meet in the evenings, they have meetings, but there should be a special youth branch in every church with people who have been trained to teach the history that is not being taught in the schools. Many schools teach history, but it's, you know, woke or DEI or cancel culture or whatever crap they're teaching today. It should be Christian. It should be based on Christian values. It should be based on things like, you know, like Alexis Tocqueville, Democracy in America is from 200 years ago. There's so much that has to be taught.
You're very correct.
I was part of that National Honor Society. I was on the honor roll all through high school. They had the Regents diploma also, and they had AP program where you took classes that were pre-college, before you graduated high school. And I saw that when I was going through high school, which was a lot of years ago, that people were interested in being changers, change agents. And I think young people now are trying to find their place, in society. And I think that the more that the churches, like you said, teach the American history and um, the great men and women that helped build the country, and how we came from the oppression of England, that they would start to understand maybe a little bit more about the direction that some of these political parties are trying to direct the country, and that they would rise up and take their place and position.
Right, right.
So I think you're absolutely right about it.
All I can say is that churches, they have the building, they have the facilities. I'm sure in every church there are some very, very intelligent people who could run an educational program that would supplement what's going on in the school. And also, Christians should be in the board of education in every school.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
What happens is when you let the crazy atheists come in, they destroy everything. And
Sure.
little by little, they corrupt the country.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
That a good stopping place, Avi?
Okay, we're good. We'll continue, God willing, next week if I'm not in the hospital.
Yeah, don't be in the hospietl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I personally, I think that even if they say, okay, the battery is gone, they'll say, okay, we'll go to the office and set an appointment for a day that you come in to have the thing removed, which would be maybe a week or two away. So, so I think I will be free on Tuesday.